you plan on becoming a war correspondent?
No, I never planned on being a war correspondent. I came up in the days of Watergate, and it was all investigative reporting. We all wanted to be Woodward and Bernstein. But you take what your time hands you, and what my time handed me over nearly 40 years was a continuous flow, it seemed, of conflict, pretty much.
So you've obviously covered tons of different conflicts. Why don't we focus in on just a couple of them and explore, unpack them a little more. So let's start off by talking about Chechnya.
When you realize that the Russians were firing artillery and dropping these bombs, to see a couple of Chechen fighters in camouflage, sporting the large green sashes, the Islamic colors, and this giant knives across their waists and an RPG over their shoulder, they were going off to war to fight a superior armed force. And I remember stopping a couple of them on a burned out bridge, shared a cigarette with them while they told me their story in broken English and my non-existent Russian. But they were happily, cheerfully going off with reinforcements. There were now two of them, whereas there'd only been one before. And they were going to fight the Russians. And I said, why don't you just hunker down like everybody else? And they said, oh, no, we're going to war. And as they turned to leave, one of them stopped. Actually, he stopped and he hands me this. This is a Chechen wolf. It's a pin where if you wore this, I think even now in downtown Moscow, there's certain neighborhoods where you would be driven out of. He hands me this, he smiles, he flicks his cigarette away, and away they go like, and I've never shaken the image of a couple of Snow White's dwarves with the best of intentions and a smile on their face going off to fight a war against a superior force. Those wars always leave you with these images. They're totally absurd, because war is totally absurd. El Salvador was my first war, and it was also the biggest eye-opener. The siege was on in the city, and the big picture was both sides were finally realizing neither side could win. But in the meantime, they were trying to blow the hell out of each other anyway. And in El Salvador, for an urban war, in neighborhoods, you go down to the neighborhood and you listen for the bang bang and you try and parallel the bang bang, because in that case it was always a running battle. And when I heard one happening, I kind of tried to keep those two over there fighting each other, and I'm going along the side trying to see, because you can't see much. There's buildings, houses, gardens. So I hunkered down at one point when the thing seemed to be a little too close. I mean, now I could see the guy, and he was only like 75 meters away, and he was running like hell, so something was obviously coming after him. Hunkered down behind a wall, whammo, something happened. And all I know is the wall behind me kind of moved, and I looked up, and all of the leaves in the tree above me had shredded. Somebody had thrown a grenade. And but for a wall, a brick this thick and a little bit higher than I am, I might not be here today. So that was Welcome to War, it was 011.
So what was the story that you covered in Rwanda? What's the image from there that still stays with you?
One day, NGOs and reporters were lined up at the border at Rwanda, hoping to go over to see these Hutu camps. And a child soldier set up a barrier. It was 2 wooden school chairs with an elastic band stretched across it, maybe 4 feet long, and an AK lovingly held under his scrawny little arms. He couldn't have been 4 feet, and he couldn't have been sane because his eyes were just, it was like looking at a bear who's been too long in the zoo. And the entire convoy stopped. It's like an 11-year-old boy stopped 10 vehicles full of aid and as many more full of reporters and NGO personnel. Nobody wanted to provoke this child into opening fire, and nobody knew whether he would. And it was the most absurd standoff. And for an hour, we all stood there watching this child pace like a crazed bear and blocked only by an elastic band.
Going from someplace like Rwanda and then coming back home, they're so drastically different. How do you adjust to that?
I think there's stages of it. You want to tell everybody about it, then you don't want to say anything at all. And you begin to resent the fact that you come back to your home country and this isn't the burning issue of the day, and why the hell not? And then I think you come through that too. This is the way the world works. And the only way you can serve it is to tell that story. This one you've done, the next one you're going to. Get over yourself. So it's a series, I think, of phases about how you deal with covering conflict and returning home, where generally the public has no concept of it. You don't feel great about it initially, but you come to grips with it, I think, over time.